Let's talk herd. Hi, Mary. It's
Hello.
lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
And actually, it's funny to say, but I love the subject that is your calling or your vocation. I don't know how you would describe it, which is the dying process. And I know that can be, it's an emotional subject, obviously, but it's also fascinating. And I do believe we're at the beginning of really understanding what it's about and the, the power of it for us. So yeah, just start where you feel to start about it, and I'm sure we're gonna have a great conversation.
Um, Gosh, where to start?
How did it
Uh,
start for
I,
you, really?
oh, we would talk all day long. We talk about how it started. I would say
Yeah.
I love the dying process. I absolutely love it. Like if I'm deep in my heart, I love it.
Hmm.
But if I'm not deep in my heart, no, I do not.
Okay.
And I would say I've been in the past 5 years, four horse deaths that were closely related to me, and then probably a handful of others that were pasture mates of other people. So I don't know, probably get up to maybe 7 deaths I can think of in the
Okay.
past 5 years. So it's like it's right there.
Hmm.
And but I would say everything I've learned from it. It's like even to talk about some of this when I started writing about it a couple years ago. I wrote about it to process these deaths.
Hmm.
And I learned a lot about hospice in that process. I learned a lot about dying in that process. And then now it's just gotten to a point, it's just so obvious to me,
Hmm.
second nature. It is hard, absolutely. But that what I was talking about 3 years ago, I don't even care to talk about anymore because I'm not even there. I'm
Hmm.
like to even say, here's what the dying process is. And then for someone who's never been introduced to the dying process, they've only known euthanasia. Um, I spent the last 3 years sort of bridging that gap between those two things. And now I hate to say it like this, and you can edit this out if you want to. I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
don't care. It's like the conversation is just because for me, learning how to, okay, when I did hospice for my last horse that died 2 years ago,
Hmm.
that was a culmination point of everything all the previous horse deaths had taught me. I
Hmm.
was not happy with the euthanasia paradigm. I always knew euthanasia did not resonate with me,
Hmm.
and I was not satisfied just to accept that. It was like, no, there has to be another way to do this. And
Hmm.
so that's when I started researching hospice in humans. How do I adapt it to horses? And then when my last horse died 2 years ago, he was a culminating moment of taking all that I had learned from everyone else. And then he showed me how to put it into practice. It was a 2 month process with him. I did not know when he would die. I There was a terminal diagnosis in the sense that the vet said, anything we find we can't fix. So it was
Okay.
like, oh, okay, well then there's no point in trying to label this. We just know that whatever this is, they can't fix it, so he will die. And
Yeah.
at that point, I knew that was now hospice for me. So I
Hmm.
stopped trying to fix what was happening, and I just wanted to support him in dying. And then I really let him lead me in that. And I had him about 12 years, and over that process, the longer I had him, the more I let him make the decisions. And so it was a
Hmm.
very baby step, like which way are we going to go on the walk? Are we going right or left? You pick. And I would
Yeah.
wait. And he goes, well, no, we're just going to stand here and eat grass. I said, oh, okay, then let's do that. So
Hmm.
I was already used to these little tiny ways of doing things. And I remember the first time I finally figured out he did not want to wear a halter. And we were at the gate to go on a walk, and then it just dawned on me, why does he present his right side to me at the gate?
Hmm.
I go, wait a minute, and I have to walk around you, put the halter on the left, and out we
Yeah.
go. And we're going down a road, so I sort of want a halter on,
Yeah,
I tell him,
yeah.
I'm sorry, we're in people world right here. This is not ideal. I would prefer that we just walked without one, but we got roads and cars, and they do things that
Yeah.
you are not aware of, and I don't
Yeah.
want anyone to get hurt. But he
Yeah.
was at the gate repeatedly with his right side, and this one day I just stopped and looked at him, and I thought, why are you always presenting the right side?
Mm.
And it just dawned on me that, oh my gosh, you don't want to wear a halter. Ding,
Mm.
ding, 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 ding.
Those moments are just amazing,
And
aren't
then,
they?
yes. And so I looked at him. I thought, oh my gosh, you've been so patient and consistently
Mm.
communicating this to me. And today I've heard it. I
Yeah.
was so excited that I heard him. I thought, okay, what can I do so that he knows I heard him? So I looked around. And I thought, okay, is there a way we can do this walk without a halter? And so I thought, well, I could just let you into the yard without a halter. That would be okay and not go down the road. So I got rid of the halter, opened the gate, and just let him out. And
Yeah.
it was so important to me that he knew I heard him. Because if he
Mm.
knew I heard him, he would keep trying to communicate with me. And so
Exactly.
over 12 years, it was that steady progression of allowing him to communicate with me. What things can I not do so that I open up the space for him to
Yeah.
communicate something to me? And so time just slowed down. Yes, I might have an idea to go do something, but I wasn't tied to it. Whether we do the walk or not the end of the world. Maybe we'll just
Yeah.
go hang out in the yard or whatever it is. So when it came to dying, I was already used to letting him lead me. I was already used to
Mm.
silence. I was already used
Yeah.
to doing nothing. I was already used to sitting there with for hours doing nothing, not thinking I had to do anything, seeing what's happening and just being with it and being okay with not doing anything. So then I knew he was dying, then I had an article, my favorite article on the stages of dying. I posted on my Facebook page all the time.
Yeah.
And I read that. Like, even though I knew the stages of dying, I still pulled it out and read
Yes,
it
to
because
make
when you're in that
sure.
moment,
Yeah.
yes, in that
You need
moment, it can be
support.
really intense and scary. And because I don't do this every day, even though I talk about
Mm.
it, I still don't do it every day.
Yeah.
And so then I would read it going, okay, so when these things start to happen, that will tell me roughly where in the dying process he is.
Yeah.
And that's the intellectual side I kept a hold of because we are human beings and we have an
Yeah.
intellect and it
Yeah.
is a gift. And then the other thing was I just need to spend time with him and let him
Yeah.
be and see what he initiates, if anything, with me. And then I just ride that little dance. And that dance
Yeah.
went 2 months, and he died on his own,
Yeah.
like peacefully,
Yeah.
peacefully. Like
Easily.
I take I take pictures of all my horses that have died after they died. I
Mm.
go, this is it. I was going to keep it. I'm not going to look at it. But then I have gone back and looked, and I have compared. And then the
Mm.
horse that I euthanized, which were particular circumstances that were really intense, she was
Yeah.
not in the rest state when she died.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
veterinary medicine could not bring her to the rest state before they euthanized her. So she was
Wow.
euthanized in the sympathetic nervous system. And that, when I looked at that, I thought,
Mm.
this bothers me.
Yeah.
I don't, we're dying. There's no way around that. But I'm looking for comfort and peace. I think
Yeah.
it's pretty safe to say most people want a peaceful death. No matter how it
Yeah.
happens, they want a peaceful death.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so in that, I also found that sometimes we don't know what peace is because we're so
Mm.
afraid to look at dying. So the whole thing's scary. We label the whole thing this big scary thing that's
Yeah.
painful. The whole thing is, and then we euthanize so quickly because we don't want to look at it. But when I started
Mm.
looking at dying and the dying process, what's painful, what's not painful,
Mm.
what does that last moment look like? Well, the body can arch. And I knew
Mm.
one person. She said I was young, and the vet was there. The horse seemed okay, but not. It was all this confusion, and then it
Yeah.
went to that.
Yeah.
And I talked to her years later. I said, "Oh my gosh, he was in the final moments. Like you're looking at a minute tops."
Mm.
but they
Mm.
got scared because no one knew this is what the body does or can do right at the end when it
Yeah.
releases the spirit. And so
Yeah.
they euthanized him like 30 seconds before he's going to die. So
Wow.
anyway, but years
Yeah.
later, in learning about the natural dying process, it was like, oh, I could have saved myself a vet bill right there. Like, no, the horse had it under control. The horse knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
This was not painful. This is just what the body will
Yeah.
do right at the end. But because
Yes.
we don't know what that looks like, it scares us. And we love these animals, and we don't want anything bad to happen. But that was just so eye opening to me. And
Yeah.
there's one other one I saw. There was a YouTube video someone posted, and I thought, oh, hats off to you that you posted this. I watched the whole thing, and they weren't planning on they didn't know their horse was going to die. They thought the vet was going to come and they're going to fix this, and then of course the horse died. And he got to the end and thought that he was going to have to euthanize his own horse with his gun.
Wow.
And because I think it went into like seizures.
Yes.
And
I've
then I was
seen
talking
that.
to my sister who's a nurse, and I said, tell me about seizures in people. Do you guys freak
Yeah.
out that they're in pain when they're having a seizure? She said, no. What we're worried about is other things, and we want to get them under control because
Okay.
we want them to be able to continue living and not have other
Yeah.
damage happen. We're not
Yeah.
freaking out about pain. And
Yeah.
I go, well,
Because they're
that's
not
interesting because
there.
in horses, if we see a horse in a seizure, we freak out, think they're suffering,
Yeah.
and we got to do something. And I go, well, that's
Yeah.
interesting. And people, we don't freak out and think they're in pain. We start looking at how can we get this under control so that
Yeah.
we can heal what's going on. But if you're right at the end dying, okay, it's a
It's
little dramatic to
happening.
look at. It is dramatic to look at.
Yeah.
But I really question. I go, I don't think there's suffering there. We may be
No.
suffering looking at it.
Do you think it's because we are, we're not horses, we're humans. So we have a more
Right.
innate understanding of our own, just state of being. So we know that when someone's having a seizure, they're kind of in a different
Yep.
place. And for some reason
Yes.
that doesn't cross over to the animals. Yeah, like we just assume we have these kind of, it's almost like fear. We've got this profound fear of suffering in our animals. And I don't
Yes.
know. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
The other thing
Yeah.
that
And
comes up really
yeah.
strongly for you when you're talking about the whole thing for me is that I really feel like we don't believe, it sounds ridiculous, but we kind of don't trust that they will die. Like it's like I mean that sounds ridiculous. But I read a post
Yeah.
recently from someone, and she had two elderly, very elderly, I think they were in their 30s, and she was doing, it was almost like intensive care. She said they got no teeth left, they've not really got any defenses left, and so she hadn't really done it the holistic way, but she was looking after them, giving them, keeping them alive essentially. And she was like, when is the moment to put them down? When are they, how do I know? Because, and I mean,
Yeah.
I don't comment on these things, but I kind of felt like saying, well, they will die. But I think she thought that
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
the only way they would die is if she takes them off intensive care, that like they would just go on forever, like, plugged in
Yeah.
to the food
Yeah.
and it just doesn't
Yeah.
work like that, does it? I mean, they do
No.
close. They
Yeah.
want to leave at some point, that body. Yeah.
Yes. 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 They will die. They will die.
Yeah.
Don't worry. They will die. They will not die on our timeline. They will
Exactly. Yeah.
not die for our comfort level because it's not about us. It's
Yeah.
about them and quite frankly, their relationship with their creator. And to me, that is so sacred that I don't touch that. I do
Yeah.
not touch that unless they call upon me. And even then, I don't know how to explain that.
Mm.
I have no control.
Yeah.
It's their life. Yes, I'm the one who stuck the fence around them. So
Yeah.
yes, I have a
Yeah.
responsibility. But but at least with my experience with the horses I have had, and even ones that have not come to me that were elsewhere, they all know how to die, but they will not die in our timeline. And for
Mm,
those who want to learn something from the horse, you will absolutely learn something when you follow their timeline.
mm,
But it will be
yeah.
the most heart wrenching thing you've ever seen if you've never allowed them that level of autonomy before. And
Yeah.
so for me, by the time I got to the horse that I was able to do hospice care for 2 years ago, I literally was in my heart for 2 months straight, 24/7,
Mm,
in a
that's
place of
intense.
vulnerability. And I had never done that in my entire life. I
Mm,
felt every emotion. I put everything on the table. If I was with him, I put everything on the table. I wouldn't point it at him. I'd go parallel to him, a little ways out, and just say how I felt. Get it out of my
mm,
system. And
yeah.
then the moment I was out of my system, I could hear him,
Wow.
because
Yeah.
now the noise within me is out.
Mm,
And then this one day, I was just, it was early on in those 2 months where I was mentally making that transition to hospice. I wanted to stay in hospice. I wanted to allow him his death. I didn't want to freak out. And so I
mm,
had, but I still am a human and I get scared. So this one day
yeah.
I was out there and I got scared. So then I thought, okay, then I just need to say this out loud. So I just poured my heart out.
Mm,
Everything I felt, I held nothing back.
yeah.
And then had a big cry at the end of it. I felt so peaceful. And what came to me was, Mary, you don't have to do anything. I'm
Mm,
doing it.
yeah.
I thought, oh,
Yeah.
hallelujah.
That's so
I
beautiful.
was going, oh,
Yeah.
my stress was coming because I felt responsible, like I had to do it for him. And he's
Yeah.
going, no, you don't. And
Yeah.
that was so eye opening. So then I began to realize if I got stressed, it was because I was taking on things that were not mine to take on.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so
That's
those two
such a
months were
root.
just learning how to balance that. And
Yeah.
and that was huge. And that was the first time in my life I actually totally surrendered control. I took care
Mm,
of myself. I still,
mm,
about every week or two, I would get scared. So I would
mm,
express it, get it out of my system, come back to the peace place. Okay, he's taking care of himself. He can do this.
yeah.
And it was just that. Um, it was a constant practice. And,
Mm,
really, I have him to thank for his last gift to me was, Mary, this is how you be yourself,
mm,
be in your heart, and be in
yeah.
a vulnerable place of total acceptance of yourself and of
Yeah.
what's around you.
Yeah.
And to me, that was so profound. I had never done that like that quite before.
Mm,
And that was like kindergarten training. Now everything's just moved from there to where it's not even with horses, it's just out with people. Can I be in my
yeah.
heart? Can I,
Yeah.
what am I feeling? And then identifying what I'm feeling, and then, and just healing things in me. But
Yeah.
who did I first learn from? That horse.
Yeah.
And
That's
who
really
better?
beautiful.
For a horse, I would go through this.
Yeah.
I will be vulnerable for
Yeah.
2 months straight for a horse. Nobody
Mm,
else, but for a horse, yes, I will do it.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
but from that, it was like this profound experience happened of connection with him in a way that was not on my terms at all. It was
Mm,
so moving that I go, I want to live like this.
yeah.
Horses
Yeah.
or no horses, this is where I
Yeah.
want to live. And
Yeah.
so now I'll actually say, I don't care if I have a horse again.
Yeah.
I mean, if they come into my life, I know exactly where I would pick
Yeah.
up, but I don't need them in the way that I used to need them, because
Yeah.
they open this part of me up to just like, no, this is just how I am in the world. And then
Mm,
where am I going in the world, or what's coming to me, or where am I called next? I don't know. Um,
yeah. It's that
but
freedom.
that gift he gave me, total
Yeah.
freedom, no fear.
Mm,
And then
yeah.
if there is fear, it's like, oh, I'm not in my heart. Oh, wait,
Yeah.
I can come back to my heart.
Yeah. It's so amazing.
So it's just
Yeah.
that practice. And so it's like, wow, this is what it means to be fully alive.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the
Yes, we're
end,
going to
it's
live and
not
we're going to
really
die.
about death, is it? It's more about life, really.
Living,
Yeah.
living. And
Yeah.
then when the end comes and I get to be there present for a horse or even a person or whoever it is, as they transition through that death process, because the physical body does die. There's no question
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
But I get to be present in that. And sometimes in that, yeah, I'm going to be incredibly sad. I might be angry. I'll feel all sorts of things, but I
Yeah.
feel them. I let them express. And then when I let them express it, I don't have to carry it. And now I can come back to a peace place and I can connect with them. I can hear them now.
Yeah.
And it's just that's just being alive. That
Yeah.
I'm a human. Yes, sometimes
Yeah.
we have hard emotions, but
Yeah.
that's normal and healthy.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.